Hi class, welcome to the mini lecture on accessibility. Through this particular lecture, you'll be able to learn specifically what needs people have when coming to your site that maybe you haven't thought of before. Maybe you have and you're not sure exactly how to adjust for some of those needs. So this is where we're going to get into a little bit of that, all right? So what is accessibility? It's usability. Um, for those with a disability. So if usability is ease of use, then accessibility is ease of use with a disability. It's also the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disability recognizes that the access to information and communications technologies, including the web, is a basic human right. Accessibility supports social inclusion for people with disabilities as well as others, such as older population, people in rural areas, and people in developing countries. Web accessibility means that people with disabilities can perceive, understand, navigate, interact, and even contribute to the web. So these are all things that you ask yourself when you are building your site if someone is able to participate um, at this level with the design that you've provided, right? It means equal access and equal opportunity. And there are a few things that we don't think about sometimes. And once you hear what those examples are, a light will go off and you'll say, oh, of course, maybe you hadn't thought of it, but um, the whole purpose being that they have equal opportunity. My father was 99 when he passed, but he was blind for probably at least 10 years. But he had grown accustomed before that to using the internet. And so he tried to find all different kinds of ways to do that. Ultimately, he would ask other people for help. But that desire to find out information never disappeared. So these are the kinds of things that we want to think about when we are providing information online. The W3C is an international community. They have a full-time staff and the public work together to develop web standards. This is led by the web inventor Tim Berners-Lee and CEO Jeffrey Jaffe. The W3C site maintains accessibility specifications and testing. So you can go to w3.org and you'll be able to find all kinds of different testing tools and specifications that help you recognize the kinds of things that are expected today. And there are organizations and corporations who are required to include some of these different standards. It's really helpful to know about it because you never know who your client's going to be. So it's good to have these things under your belt. Apple has an accessibility page on their website. And if you'll take a look at that, if you haven't already seen it, there's Sadie Paulson is featured there. And Sadie graduated from the digital cinematography program. She was one of our students. And she has cerebral palsy. So she has a nurse that helps her. She has a chair that is decked out with all kinds of technology that enable her to function without using her hands and to edit, which is what she really likes to do. So I encourage you to take a look at that. It is in your FSO assignment, the link for you to take a look and just see the kind of things that they supply. Apple has come up with to address a lot of the accessibility concerns today. So for accessibility, there are multiple considerations for that. There's the visual, the auditory, mobility and dexterity, and cognitive. The visual, low vision is a very common one. It affects a lot of people at some point in their lives. Auditory, there can be, people who are born with that and they may already know how to use tools that they are equipped with, or that may be something that happens over time. And then there's the mobility and dexterity. That can be not only for aging uh, populations, but also for the very young. You can see, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds online today. So those are some of the things that we think about, and we'll touch on those. And then there's the cognitive, and that can deal with memory. These are the things that we'll look at real quick, and we'll see if you can come up with a few things, ideas on your own, and I'll give you a few here on how you can improve the accessibility for your site. Low vision is a very common disability, and there are some very simple things that we can do that not only help with the design of our sites, but really helps those people who have the low vision. One thing we can do is the alternative text, and that just means that we have a line of text, a line of code that is in our code, and in the middle of it we can insert a description so that when someone is using a screen reader, for example, it will actually read what is on the image to them as they tab through. Otherwise, they won't be able to because the image won't show up. The other thing about alternative text is when you put the terms in there in a search engine, then that image stands a better chance of coming up when someone is doing a search. This is something that you look at for all of your images. It certainly helps the person with low vision to understand that there's an image there that is supporting the text that they are having. Okay, you can also put that on your logos. So go ahead and put alternative text there as well. If you're using Wix, the place that you would find that is under your settings, and then it's simply a question that asks, tell Google what this image is. And then you're going to give a very brief but descriptive term. Consider keywords as well that are very important because they will show up in your SEO. So that's a good reason to do that. Should be less than 70 characters. And we talked a little bit about your screen readers. One of the things that we use in the classroom is the Chrome Vox. It's an extension for Google, and it will go through and read everything that's on your screen. Sometimes that's really annoying, so when you turn it on, be aware that it's going to be really loud. Well, Wix has a particular theme, and it has a very large text, and it says, "My name is dot dot dot," and a lot of people use that. A lot of students really like it. It's bold, it's clean. And when you put on a reader, however, it's going to say, "My name is ellipse, ellipse, ellipse." So when you are designing something, you want to make sure that that's really what you want. For me, I would take it out. I wouldn't want, as using a screen reader, to have to listen to that. Okay, it's not really worth it. It doesn't buy me that much design leverage there. So that's something you want to think about, and you can test your site out when you turn on Chrome Vox. And if you have any questions about how to do that, you can contact me and I'll walk you through it. And navigation, that's something that we know how important it is for us if we have full site, but we don't always think about some of the details. So the buttons need to be very large, or should be when they can be. They need to be high contrast. In fact, your whole site, the higher the contrast, the easier it's going to be for anyone to read, but especially for those with low vision. And then there are some other issues with vision. So does this work? This is a red arrow on a green box. It might seem like it's all right, but if you have color blindness at all, then typically it's the red and the green that are going to be affected. And so this wouldn't show up as well for someone else, and we wouldn't want to cause that stumbling block on our website because they're just going to go someplace else, and it may be that it's really important. So it's just a percentage who have that issue, but it's easy to avoid, and it's something that we should consider. Then multiple clues, breadcrumbs, navigation bars, and making sure that we have one at the bottom and at the top, and that we have a page title in our tab. All these different navigation clues that help people move around are really important. It also is really good for those with a cognitive or memory issue. Right? So those are things that we're careful to include as well. You've been taught never to have your audio start automatically, that you wouldn't have autoplay, right? That you don't want to be in a public setting and go to a site and suddenly have music come on and everyone knows where you are on your site and what's going on, and it's disruptive and jarring, and the user doesn't have enough control over that. So we've always taught you that. However, what if your biggest target audience has mobility issues? Maybe it's an older generation, then or younger, very young, then in those situations you may need it to autoplay. So depending on what it is and what it is that you're working on. Um, so keep that in mind because there's always some exceptions, all right? A screen reader is going to read left to right and top to bottom. So one of the things that we want to think about is the linear flow. As they tab through or as a screen reader goes through, something like this would only read the top part of the information, the search by model, vehicle model, entry field, search. And they would totally miss the opportunity to choose between used cars or new cars. And that can be make the difference in a lot of time for someone to have the new car, used cars before the search, right? The visual elements that we use, if we are using arrows, know that screen readers may not pick that up. If we're using colors to distinguish between columns and in priority and things like that, it's not necessarily going to read the color of your bound box or anything. So indents, again, it's not necessarily going to understand that because you have made a new line that's indented that this is now subcategory. It's not going to be able to express that, and a drop-down menu won't necessarily be obvious to someone either. So the things that we really want to focus on is the text, page titles, very distinct headings, because the screen reader will read the headings for them. So instead of using a lot of visual imagery to break up content and to explain or differentiate information, you want to go ahead and use text for that wherever you can, right? And then proximity. If we chunk information together, that makes the experience so much smoother for the user. And if you're going to have help buttons, then they should be within, help should be within a few clicks. They shouldn't have to go through multiple links to find the help that they need, right? Here's another little thing that can happen. If someone is using mobile zoom on their phone, then the dialog boxes can sometimes become hidden. So you want to be sure that when the dialog opens in the middle of the screen, after selecting an option, that the login entry box is near where they've uh, selected it, that they're not having to zoom around, because in some cases, as you can see on the left, you actually have a clue that there's a dialog box, but sometimes it's so far off screen when they zoom in, you don't see where it is, and you're not sure that it's even come up, and so you don't get the prompt. So when you are designing, and mobile is very important this month, we look at that. In editing for the web, you looked at content, you looked at building your first sites, but now we also look at all those things, including the mobile screen and how responsive your site's going to be, and designing for multiple screen types and different users. So make sure that you're thinking about that and check some of the ways in which accessibility is affecting or being affected by your mobile device. And the last one I want to talk about is memory issues. When you have a text field that says driver's license, for example, and that's where you're supposed to put your long number, that can be a problem because someone with a memory issue may begin and then they realize they have to go find something to get the information they need. And when they come back, if they've begun, they don't remember necessarily what it was that they were to put in that particular field. So the best way to do that, to get around that, is very simple, and that is to put the information outside the field text box. Okay? Those are just some of the things that you can do with just the information that you have, and being able to think about it. You will start to make better choices for your designs. You can go to W3 and find all kinds of accessibility testing tools. In fact, you will do that in Portfolio 6. You will go through your particular portfolio and you will start to look at it for accessibility issues, and you'll make sure that everything has its alternative text and is high contrast, clear to read, and you can test it with a screen reader and accessibility testing tools. Right? So I hope that this helped you a little bit when it comes to the accessibility. If you have any questions whatsoever, please be sure to contact me at any time. You can text me, you can email me, you can call me on the weekends. It's all fine. If you have a question, I can probably answer it for you and get you on your way. All right, so let's just do that. All right, thank you and have a good evening.